Court has come out against same-sex marriage, and again, she is a pastor of her church. She preaches adamantly against homosexuality, and kudos for her to stand against the unnatural works of idolatry, which is, the homosexuality. And so this woman, who is one of the greatest tennis players of all time, has come out against this by boycotting certain airlines, and people have made the joke, say, well, she's gonna have to boat to the next tennis. And the reaction of the LGBTQ ABCDFG whatever community has really gotten upset and thinks that her name should be removed from the arena or the stadium that she is named after because of her works as a tennis player. And this goes back to the tolerance of these people, of the cultural Marxists, I guess you would say. They don't have any tolerance for us, but they want us to be tolerant of their perverted lifestyle, even if it includes in children. And that's one of the biggest thing I think Margaret Court is concerned about, because she saw, when she was a tennis player, young ladies being introduced. And I'll be honest with you, and you can look up, do your research. Majority of these young men, Milo Yiannopoulos is a good example. I mean, he believes that his conversion to homosexuality, because it is an idolatrous act, was when he was basically sexually molested when he was young. If there is a video you can find on YouTube where you'll find most of the testimony are young people being converted to homosexuality at a certain age. They feel it's norm, but at the same time they don't realize they're being sexually molested. They think this is a thing they like, so therefore it's not bad, and therefore we'll go ahead, which it is strange. I mean, if you talk to these homosexual men and their targeting of young boys, and same thing was happening. I mean, we have had incidents where we have 14, 13-year-old girls targeted by older women. There is a monologue in the Vagina Monologues where we have an older woman seducing a young lady into lesbianism. And that's what scares Margaret Court to the utmost, is how predatorial these lesbians are, and they are very predatory. We've got references you can look. Like I said, they're school teachers, they're gym teachers. There's all these predatory lesbians that do these things. I'm so glad that I was protected. I was young. I knew men who were just kind of creepy and how to avoid that. There was a guy at an anime convention who was, getting involved in sexually molesting younger boys. And so I did a video talking about that not too long ago, and how to avoid that situation, because there are predatory men or predatory women, but that goes the same way with, there are predatory men that go after young girls around. Don't get me wrong. I think it's not talked a lot about how these predatory men will go after these young boys, and it seems like most of those predatory men are involved in homosexual lives. You have to divide love between sex, because it's like your mom and dad love you. They don't have sex with you. They do things that seem abnormal because they love you, because it's not normal to love someone, okay? It's not in our nature really to love someone, or it's in our nature to hate and fight and kill. You see the love that parents have. Now that's one sort of love, but then you have lust and sex, which a lot of people mistake as love. And I see where Margaret Court would be so offended by this. I see why she would see what is wrong, and then of course coming to Christianity and studying the biblical, and she could fit two and two together, that the predatory lesbians that were seducing the younger girls is frightening and is an abomination as well. One thing you have to agree with homosexuality on, it has to do with sex. It doesn't have to do with the way true love is, family love. It doesn't have to do with mental connection. It's about, material, fleshly sex, okay? If you think that love is sex, and have sex with a doll, you know, one of those blow up dolls, but buddy, you're not going to have a mental connection. You're not going to have real true love. You know, like there's a difference between happiness and joy. It's the same thing. There's a difference between lust and love, okay? If you cannot figure those things out, then I don't think you should be in a relationship. I think you need to check yourself and realize, it's like dealing with these mad cows or the MGTOWs or whatever, trying to understand them. You're whining and complaining because you're wanting the wrong thing from a woman. You're not thinking about the mental connection, and then you're not checking yourself. You're not checking to see if you're not playing video games too much, if you're not involved in pornography too much, if you're not involved in alcohol too much. Of course, it's going to hurt those relationships by being involved in those negative things. You're not perfect, buddy, and you need to try to figure out what's wrong with you before you start trying to accuse what's wrong with women. And it's the same thing with this whole society. We need to check ourselves. I mean, really look in the mirror. You can't do it on our own. You have to have the will of the Father. You have to have the Spirit of God to do those things. And that's what's interesting. If you look at Romans 1, it talks about the nature. The thing is, Paul is talking about idolatry. All through the things, God's most hated sin is idolatry. But he says he gives them up to their own lust. In other words, God was protecting those people from, you know, having sex with each other, from predatory sex. Because what happened is the priest wanted the young boys and was given up. These are the false religions out there. And they were given up to their own lusts. And he let that go on because the people were worshiping another God, because God is a jealous God. Idolatry is the most hated thing of God. And idolatry is really a very simple thing. If you rather spend time doing something else than spend time with God, you are in idolatry. Ooh, buddy, that's the truth. That is the truth. It's when you get into there and you're doing something, you say, well, I could be reading the Bible or I could be doing that. And that's what idolatry is. And so what happens is when God is saying, or what Paul is talking about, Romans 1, is once you start crossing that line and going towards the other way, towards another God, he allows things to happen to you that wouldn't normally happen to you if you stayed with him in the presence of the Lord. And I think he was referring more to the Old Testament, because I think now we have Jesus Christ, who is all the time constantly battling for us, who is the mediator, the greatest lawyer in the universe, who is saying, you know, this person is in sin and this person broke your heart, God, but he has changed his mind and he wants to serve you. And there's your thought on that. And I give props to Margaret Court to stand by her convictions. As someone who's a conservative, you know, I don't know. It's like I heard an Australian preacher was telling her, said, you're like Deborah. You know, Deborah back in the Bible. And you got to remember about Deborah was raised up because the men were out there playing their Xboxes and their PlayStations, and instead of being real men. Interesting. Sounds like today. So what does God do? He raises up godly women like Margaret Court maybe, and he is able to do his will still today. So more props to you. There you go, folks. There's my thought on that. You guys have a great day.